Mike Gundy has spoken, and Oklahoma State is a destination school. Got it? Northern Iowa is kind of that for wrestling, justifying their number 5 ranking. But this is Get Your Orange on Friday, and it's also time to dust off the jerseys because the long-awaited spring game is finally back in Stillwater.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem the code Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Get in on the Game Time action today. Meanwhile, we get to talk about Cowboy football once again in a big way. We have been praying to 8-pound, 11-ounce baby Jesus to give us the spring game. If you're wanting to build the NIL, you're wanting to build the excitement, the anticipation, the season ticket sales, if you're wanting to inspire people to be a part of all of that, once again, you have to give them something. And thankfully, our prayers have been answered because Mike Gundy just announced that the spring game is, in fact, coming back. And he kind of also hinted at the fact that it makes sense because we have 30-some-odd new players on this roster. So for us to get acquainted with them on the football field, we need to see it. And the spring game is going to be the best opportunity to do that. On top of it, there will be a 30-minute window before the scrimmage and a 30-minute window after the scrimmage where they do like a meet and greet, players meet the fans and the fans meet the players, so on and so forth. This is extremely important for Oklahoma State this season. Now, the only downside, if there is going to be a downside, is if we put up crazy numbers in the spring game, perhaps we enter Big 12 play as preseason top 10. I personally don't want that. After taking an absolute hammering in the pocketbook this previous season, betting on the Cowboys, I need some redemption, and I'm sure some of you guys out there in the betting world do as well, because we didn't really have a lot of opportunities this year to capitalize on the monetary value. The spring game is going to do a lot of things to give everybody the peace of mind that the talent level has increased. I will say, from some recent conversations that I've had with some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball, the intensity is significantly different. The fundamental technique training is already light years above where it was last year. Sometimes it's tongue-in-cheek, but I did have a linebacker tell me yesterday that they've learned more in the last week than they have in the last year with Oklahoma State. So I think that is saying something to not only the impact that the staff is having in such a short order with this roster, but the fact that we are going to be pushing people so far. Like, we've had a couple guys throwing up in the last couple days that never threw up one time all year last year. And this is going through the same Rob Glass style of program. There's an emphasis right now on pushing guys to their absolute limit, because if you know you have to get to 105 and you're going to end up around the 120 range when spring shakes out, also taking into consideration that post-spring you're going to have some people leave, just like you're going to have other people enter the transfer portal at other schools. So there's going to be more opportunities after the spring game to kind of crunch down some of the numbers once again. But there's no way to slice it without it coming down to cuts, right? Talking about slicing, we're going to have to slice some dudes off of this roster. So the coaches are not being bashful. They're not trying to keep certain dudes or not keep certain dudes. They're just simply pushing and teaching, as our buddy Parker Ainsworth would say, just a whole lot of teaching and coaching that the players have been extremely receptive. It's almost like there's a sense of a breath of fresh air, right? There's almost a sense of finally we're getting the things at Oklahoma State that brought me to Oklahoma State, and sifting through the depth chart and spring game, that is going to help us tremendously. Now, not everybody, not all of the freshmen are going to be participants in the spring game, so that's yet another reason why they're going to have to push these guys to the utmost level, than even more so than ever before, because they're on a mission. And they do know that they've got to get down to 105. And the last thing you want to do is keep somebody that you think is going to be big time, even though they haven't earned it, and get rid of some guys that have been busting their tail, putting in the extra work, putting in the extra film, putting in the extra strength and conditioning, and that bleed orange. Maybe not as talented physically as somebody you want to keep, but this is going to trim the fat. That's precisely what this is doing. They're pushing them so hard that if you aren't about your business, you're probably not going to last. If you're more excited about the nightlife in Stillwater than cramming for extra film preparation, you're probably not going to last. If you're jogging on stadiums as opposed to working the stadium so hard that you try to get faster and stronger and more stamina, then you're probably not going to last. This is going to be the most interesting time. As Mike Gundy said, this has probably been the most intense and somewhat stressful December of his career because he doesn't typically fire people. He did talk about how, again, they got families and he doesn't like to rock the boat. And that used to work at one point in time, right? But the benefit I think we have here is not only do we have guys like Todd Grantham, as Mike Gundy mentioned, he was looking for somebody that would essentially be a head coach of the defense all by himself. It'll be its own operational capabilities and it'll kind of do its own thing. And Todd Grantham was heavily recommended. Now, there was some speculation going around yesterday of who that coach could have been. More often than not, it seemed to kind of circle back around to Nick Saban because we do know out of Mike Gundy's own mouth the last couple of years, he's worked with Saban. He's reached out to Saban. He's went to practice and vice versa with Nick Saban. But another name that isn't being talked about a whole lot that probably had a hand in guiding Mike Gundy into this direction was Kevin Steele. Because Kevin Steele was the defensive coordinator right after the Todd Grantham defensive analyst year 2022. There's some carryover to 23 before Todd Grantham went to the NFL. And then Kevin Steele did come in for the bye week of BYU to help implementation and understanding for Brian Nardo on how to go to a four-man front and how it could be utilized in different ways, so on and so forth. So I would imagine that Nick Saban probably was an individual that was telling Gundy, hey, you need to take a peek at Grantham. But I feel like Kevin Steele being here, part of the Alabama program, an old school Oklahoma State dude, that conversation for Mike Gundy probably was another reason that he kind of was swayed towards Todd Grantham. And I think he's 100% right. Defensively, he's a head coach. Todd Grantham is the head coach of the defense. That's such a remarkable way to go about it. And he has said to some degree, Doug Meacham is going to quote unquote kind of, run his own thing offensively. I think it will remain to be seen if that is the case. We all know that Mike Gundy does have a deep affinity for having his hand in the cookie jar, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. And he is a very good mind offensively. So sometimes I think a lot of us would have argued that it would have been a good idea. Matter of fact, I think you could make the case that over the last 2 seasons, most of us in the fan base would have much rather had Mike Gundy calling the plays than Casey Dunn. Even if it would have looked precisely the same, Casey Dunn was not going to be the ticket. So at least with Doug Meacham, there is a lot of excitement, as we covered yesterday. He was here in the beginning of Mike Gundy's career in 2005. He coached up some of the guys that won the Big 12 title in 2011. He recruited some of the most massive names that have ever played wide receiver or tight end at Oklahoma State. The development of Brandon Pettigrew and guys like Des Bryant, Justin Blackman, Josh Cooper, David Glidden, all of those dudes were part of the Doug Meacham tree. And, of course, what he was able to do at TCU. Not to mention the battles that we're going to be able to watch in the spring and now obviously are going to have us much more excited. I think this is going to be a legitimate opportunity for us to maybe not pack Boone Pickens Stadium. Like maybe we're not going to get, almost 60,000 people in there like Bedlam. But this, I think, could be the biggest attendance of all time. I would argue that it should be, because the roster is essentially all pretty brand new. All of the coaches essentially brand new. So, again, it's building that anticipation. But the fact that we haven't had a spring game in a couple of years and the fact that the excuses that we've been getting over the last 2 years are absolute bull honky. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot sit here and tell me that them building seats on one side of a stadium has any bearing on the practicing capabilities. Or you could just literally walk in cleats up to the Stillwater High School stadium and do it there. So miss me on the excuses. We all know Mike Gundy doesn't love spring games, but he also, I think, realizes that in this day and age, especially with all of the turnover and all of the turmoil with the new roster, we need to see that. We need to see what the battle could potentially look like between Garrett Rangel, Haas Haney, Zane Flores, Maloake Smith. We need to see, is it going to be Rodney Fields probably as RB1, or is it going to be more leaning towards Trent Allen? Wide receiver position, we've got so many new guys coming in, like Lloyd and Rigby, to be right next to the guys like Dwan Lofton and Gavin Freeman and Talon Shetron and Io Shotomide-King, that those battles are going to be worth their weight in gold as well. Defensively, I would say that's where we've brought in the most amount of talent, and it's going to be a lot of new faces. And this is probably going to look a lot like Todd Grantham's old school 3-4 defenses. That's what he's kind of used to. I think another hint there is the fact that we've got guys like Jaleel Johnson and Malik Charles playing that stand-up extra outside linebacker style of role alongside Yamil Talib. This 3-4, it's going to allow us to get some of the best players on the field, because Brian McCoy coming over from Akron with a 5th-round NFL draft grade is going to be absolutely massive. But I don't think we should be surprised if there's a redshirt freshman starting right next to him. We will break down the depth charts that have been put out by a couple of individuals and give our own spin on it a little bit later. But the spring game is finally back. This is going to be absolutely massive for the Oklahoma State fan base, but we need to be reciprocal here as well, and we need to pack that stadium. I don't know what the spring game record is. I want to say it's like 32, 33-ish thousand. I think we should easily be able to do better than that because of the fact that we've been robbed of a spring game for the last couple of years. And last year was the best time to do it, right? When you have almost 40 flipping upperclassmen that are leaving, graduating, entering the draft, that is the perfect time to have a spring game because it could have showcased a lot of the young guys. But this is a pretty equal opportunity here for Mike Gundy, and I'm so glad that he's taken it. I'm so glad that he embraced the fact that he had to have essentially a head coach running the defense entirely all by himself. And it'll be interesting to see what effect that has on Doug Meacham. And you know, obviously, he's going to take advice from Mike Gundy. But as we talked about previously, this is his opportunity to prove that he can still be a head man at this level, even if it's not here. And you need to get your tickets to a spring game, to all games. And you need to do it the right way, the best way, today. You already know it is game time, the bee's knees for all of your ticketing needs. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever you're looking at events, whether it's music, comedy, theater, events locally near you, Game Time is going to be able to help you find everything you need. And with the Game Time picks, it's going to give you the most incredible deals without sorting through all of the fluffy, crazy stuff. There's going to be no need for you to search for thousands of minutes, for thousands of tickets. It's completely unnecessary. Matter of fact, I am looking at a concert in Denver in 2 days, this Sunday. I'm pretty excited about it, to go see Billy Strings. And they did give me the discount, so I've got some pretty awesome seats with Game Time. Make sure that you go there today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $20 off your first purchase, as I was able to do so. It's the real deal, Evander Holyfield. Get with Locked On College as your one-word promo code entry with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and get squared away today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But get in on the best in the ticketing industry, because it is your way to get to anything, any game, any event with Game Time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we get to shift gears here once again, because Mike Gundy did have an over an hour-long interview, so we're actually going to have to break this thing up into multiple segments. But one thing that did catch my eye, or my ear, very early on into the interview was him talking about how the roster limitations were exacerbated by the fact that we're having people literally knocking down the door to come to Oklahoma State. And as we've seen by the most recent transfer portal market, it is kind of a rare breed of individuals that we're getting here en masse. Have we been able to pick apart some guys from big-time schools here and there and get them to transfer to Oklahoma State? Absolutely. But the number of guys that are coming from the other Power 3 conferences with massive Big Ten and SEC experience is going to speak dividends. Now, I think this will be an opportunity for us to have a prove-it moment, right? So Mike Gundy's saying that we had to turn so many people away, that we had almost 50 visits in just a couple of weeks. And we ended up with, over 30 dudes in that time frame. If we can capitalize on everything that we've been able to do by bringing in all of these assistant coaches and having some extra individual coaches like nickelback and outside linebacker, inside linebacker, instead of just, an all-encompassing coach that covers all positions, the fact that we have individual training coaches for individual positions, I think does put us in a pretty rare category, which has allowed us to get some of the rare birds. But let's not kid ourselves. Guys like Todd Grantham and Kap DeDe and Ryan Osborne are the biggest reason we're likely doing all this, which could change if we end up back in Arlington. If you completely flip the script and you go from last place to first place, Arizona State style, sure, Todd Grantham, Doug Meacham, whomever could be leaving Stillwater fairly quickly, but I think a lot of us will take that because it does increase the expectations at Oklahoma State, which should allow us to increase our expectations in recruiting. You're already seeing the fact that we're top 5, top 6, top 8 on some big-time guys. That is not new. Fortunately, over the last 15 years, we as Oklahoma State fans have seen us pop up on a lot of, 4-star, 5-star, top 3, top 5s, which, let's face it, a decade, 15 years ago was not happening. Your Tatum Bells, your Des Bryants, they were outliers. Your Justin Blackmons was kind of, the normalcy. The Brandon Whedons, the 2-star dudes that we built up. Doug Meacham was here for all of that and part of all of that, which is one of the reasons why I think we should all be excited. And Haas Haney coming. Let's face that right there. It is a very, very big deal. He is one of the fastest quarterbacks in America, point blank, period. And he is so gifted that TCU had to find ways to let him play this previous season, even though they have Josh Hoover, who has proven to be a very adequate quarterback in this league that can do some pretty major things. That's a big deal. This whole thing is a big deal. And if what Mike Gundy is saying is true and we're having to turn people away because the door's getting knocked down to come to Oklahoma State, let's see it come to fruition on the field. Because if you do get back to Arlington, regardless of what happens with Todd Grantham and Ryan Osborne, Kap DeDe, Jules Montinar, whether they're here for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years, if you capitalize, then none of it matters. It's all about capitalization and young athletes knowing that you're going to be able to develop them and give them an opportunity to go to the next level. This is the perfect situation for Oklahoma State. And Mike Gundy saying this, again, this could become more of a normalcy if we capitalize. If you rewrite the record books to some degree defensively, then getting a lot of these SEC-style transfers will be applicable even if Todd Grantham is no longer here. But while he is here, we're going to embrace every piece of it because so far it's been absolutely magical. Do I firmly believe that we are a destination school? No, not quite yet. But I do firmly believe that with the uptick that we've been able to experience with Kenyatta Wright at the helm of kind of managing some of the NIL stuff, the new staff, the guys that we've brought in, if they are successful, if guys like J.K. Johnson and Mordecai McDaniel and Brian McCoy and Shindavian Bradley, Rashad Bradley, Malik Charles, if all of these dudes can come over, Jalen Davies, Havili Kafusi, if they can come over and they can catapult themselves 1 year, Oklahoma State, potentially 2 years, into the NFL after not getting the right development or at least enough development, whether it be athletically or cerebrally, to get to the NFL at Ohio State and Oregon and LSU. If they couldn't get the development they needed there, but they can get it here, there is your sales pitch moving forward to keep expanding off of the transfer portal. This is a good time for us to get behind this. With the spring game back in play, I do think that it expands the possibilities for NIL. Because the fan base right now, I mean, you could be reluctant. You could potentially be reluctant on what you're giving after the debacle of this previous season. But if you give us a spring game and it goes well and people like what they see, then clearly you can uptick that, which is an absolute necessity in today's game. Also an absolute necessity to take down number 5, Northern Iowa. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cowboys get to take on number 5 ranked Northern Iowa. This is starting to become a little bit of a theme here. We wrestle somebody, we beat them, knock them out of the top 5. Then there's a new number 5, and we get to wrestle them as well. So I'm not complaining, but I am bringing up the fact that this is starting to get a little bit ridiculous. Nonetheless, we get to look at this entire match with a lot of anticipation because this is the biggest test on the road for David Taylor thus far. And Northern Iowa, we are 34-4 against Northern Iowa all time. This is a team that does go back with a lot of history and a lot of success. They're being ranked number 5 in the country is not a bunch of smoke and mirrors. There have been some dudes this year that have been top 5, top 10 that didn't really look like it. But Oklahoma State gets to go to Northern Iowa to take on a top 5 program. And to start things off, you have at number 29 in the country, Trevor Anderson, taking on Oklahoma State's number 4 in the country, Troy Spradley, who has been reeling backwards a little bit the last couple matches. This, I think, is going to be his time to get back. I do think that he'll not only get the W, but I think he'll find a way to get a fall or at least a tech fall in this one. At 133 pounds, you have at number 18, Julian Farber, versus number 19, Reese Whitcraft. If Reese is the dude, if Reese isn't the dude, then it's going to be Cale Hughes, who's unranked. But nonetheless, I think Cale Hughes might be the better bet here for the Cowboys. At 141, you have at number 5 in the country for Northern Iowa, Cale Happel, taking on number 4 in America, Oklahoma State's Tegan at Jamison. I got Tegan in a close one right there. No, actually, I did pick Cale. Sorry, Tegan. I apologize. 149, you have at number 16, Colin Relbuto versus number 14, Carter Young. I love the story of Carter Young. I love that he's a Stillwater guy. I just haven't been overly impressed with him this year, so I would not be surprised to see Relbuto get that W. Number 157 pound, number 4 in America, Ryder Downey versus number 11, Caleb Fish. Caleb Fish is really good late. He's a third period stud, but the first 2 periods, he's usually pretty lackluster. And I know the first period you're filling each other out, which is why the time has an extra minute in the first period. I get all that. But Caleb Fish might find himself in a position where he's down so many points coming into the third that this could be problematic. So expect number 4 in the country, Ryder Downey, to possibly get a W here. Here's where I think that the tide turns after 165. Number 21 in the country, Jack Thompson versus number 6 in the country, Cam Amin. I've been the most disappointed of anybody this year. Cam Amin's that guy for me. I'm not saying he's going to lose, but I wouldn't be surprised because he's one of the few dudes, kind of like Carter Young, that's not out there scoring a bunch of points like everybody else. So his matches are always close, which makes it a nail-biting affair. Then we turn the tide. 174, number 16, Jared Sema, or unranked Nick Fox. I hope they don't pull that move like somebody else is going to do. Anyways, they take on number 3 in the country, Dean Hamidi Jr., and I think Dean Hamidi Jr. has been my favorite wrestler on the season. I know Wyatt Hendrickson is obviously a massive deal, but Dean Hamidi Jr. has been the most fun to watch in my personal opinion. Not only does he get the W here, but I think this is yet another opportunity where you could be talking about a pin or a tech fall. Number 2 in the country, Parker Kikesen versus number 3 in the country, Dustin Plott. I feel like the Cowboy has more tools in his bag this year than ever before. So I'm going to have Dustin Plott winning a tight one here against number 2, Parker. 197, of course. Our main man, number 7 in America, Luke Serber, takes on number 14 in the country, Wyatt Volker. I think Luke's hot right now. I think Luke's on a mission right now. I think Luke gets this W, and he might even get a major decision here. Heavyweight, number 15, Lance Runyon versus number 3 in America, Wyatt Hendrickson. It says number 15, Lance Runyon, or unranked Adam Adrinson. And to be honest, guys, it'll probably depend on the score, right? If the score's super close and they can win it, then they'll probably roll out number 15. If the score is so far away that they can't win no matter what, I don't think they'll wrestle him because they probably don't expect him to beat Wyatt, but they darn sure don't want to have him wrestle Wyatt unnecessarily and hurt his seeding for the Big 12s or Nationals or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them run from Wyatt Hendrickson here. But yeah, so I have us winning 125. I have us. It depends on the rest of those 133. It really does. So that could be a toss up. I have Northern Iowa winning 141. I have them winning 149. I have them winning 157. I have them winning 165. But I have us winning 174, 184, 197 in heavyweight. So what happens at 133 could be what helps decide this match. Now, the real question is, are we going to get to 30? 30 points has been the barometer of this season for Oklahoma State, and this is our second most 30-point performances consecutively in Oklahoma State history. So this will be another opportunity to kind of chase the greats of a national championship team. And that is precisely what's happening. So even though Penn State is way up there and Iowa's legit, the fact that we're already scoring this many points is why everybody should be insanely excited for next season. We also should be excited for this one. It'll be a whale of a duel. Now here's the key for me to get irritated, as all of these matches have been on ESPN Plus for the most part. We go on the main ESPN this Sunday against Iowa State, who's not going to wrestle half of their lineup. Make that make sense. But number 5 in the country on the road, Northern Iowa's biggest duel they've probably had in a couple years. And it's on Flow Wrestling. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know about you, but I would rather listen to Rex Holt than pay $30 for one duel. So I think this is a miss by whomever scheduled this to be on Flow Wrestling. That's absolutely ridiculous. And this could have been a huge moment for like Northern Iowa's, YouTube live stuff. There was a duel earlier in the season where the opposition put it out on their live YouTube, and I watched all of it. It was awesome. And the numbers were amazing. So I'm sure it helped that guy's channel. Something like that would be pretty fantastic as well. But Flow Wrestling, do better. ESPN, do better. You should have flip-flopped these. I know at the beginning of the season, you have returning, Big 12 champion, Iowa State. So I understand that. But they also got a former Cowboy who's running from competition, which sucks because I really want to see Cody Merrill get dominated by Luke Serber. It is what it is. Kind of frustrated that I got to listen to it on the radio because I'm not paying for one freaking Flow event. I'm not doing it. And I'm an audio guy anyways. My whole life, I grew up listening. So I get by just fine listening to Rex Holt on any broadcast, really. But it is a crying shame that this is happening. And we also, before we skedaddle on off of here, got to give a shout out to the Cowgirls. Tomorrow they get to take on the Lady Red Raiders in Lubbock. And this has been a little bit of a storyline this year. We'll have 5 or 6, 7 massive runs, and then we'll lose a game we're not supposed to. That's kind of been the story here. So after taking out number 9 in the country, TCU, shout out to their head coach for having phenomenal things to say about Staley Hurd and how her name is all around the Big 12 as one of the most problematic players. That was really, really cool to see. So shout out to TCU's head coach for that one. But after they beat number 9 in America, now you've got to go win a game that you're supposed to win. Point blank, period. You got to go on the road and you got to take care of business. And the Lady Red Raiders are obviously going to give you everything they have because there's only, four ranked teams in the Big 12. So if you're one of those 4 ranked teams, you have a target, especially now that the Cowgirls took down the number 9 team in the country, who is 19-1 coming into their game against the Cowgirls. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. We're going to break down Mike Gundy's interview into a few different segments. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the Iowa State duel this Sunday on the main ESPN broadcast channel. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. So excited. The spring game is back, and I'm excited for you to help us keep growing this thing. So do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Most importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funny stuff, funky stuff. You're all of it. You know what it is. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, my